Welcome. My name is Fred Laskey, and I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. On behalf of the 1,200 employees of the authority, the 60 communities, and the 11 members of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you here this morning for this great event. We had put in an order for the appropriate weather, and we had hoped for sun, but this is probably more appropriate because this is indicative of the type of weather that prior to this project would have closed the beach. Now the beach behind us, Pleasure Bay, has no storm water in it, and the rest of the beach beaches down Day Boulevard, the flows that were designed and for many years, decades, went into the beach, closing it, now flow down into a storage tunnel that will be brought over here and pumped to Deer Island for treatment. So it's an incredible it's an incredibly complex project with an incredibly long and tortured history that ends on a positive note here today. And there are a lot of speakers, so I won't go on for long, but I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the folks who drove the train on this, and that is the Board of Directors of the MWRA. And they're here today. We have Mr. Walsh, Jack Walsh representing Quincy, Mr. Mannering representing Boston, Mr. Hunt representing Boston. Where are we going around the way? Mr. Barrera representing the governor, Mr. Foti representing the advisory board from the city of Chelsea. Did I get everyone? Okay. And finally, the chairman of the board, Secretary Sullivan, who serves as the chairman of the board and is the governor's designee and is here to represent Governor Patrick at this ceremony. But he's a man who over the last 4 years built a real solid first-hand knowledge of the importance of these beaches and his Back to the Beaches programs and the initiatives that DCR has undertaken under his leadership and now as Secretary of Environmental Affairs have been incredible as far as public access and the quality of life for the folks who use the urban beaches in and around the greater Boston area. So with no further ado, I'd introduce Secretary Sullivan.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. It is great to be here and extremely exciting to be here on a project that is going to make a world of difference to the citizens of Boston, Greater Boston, and really the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as Fred indicated, I do have a few hats to wear here today. First and foremost, representing Governor Patrick, Lieutenant Governor Murray, who have made a mission of rebuilding the Massachusetts economy on three principles: education, innovation, and infrastructure. And today is a great example of the infrastructure that can be smartly invested in to improve the quality of lives of the citizens of Massachusetts, but also add to the economy here in Massachusetts as well, creating jobs, bringing in tourists. But most of all, the governor said when we make those infrastructure improvements, do so and come out better on the other side than when you went in. And this is a great example because it is going to impact the quality of life right here along our beaches. So on behalf of the governor and lieutenant governor, I want to congratulate everybody who made this project possible. I also have the hat, as Fred said, to be the chair. I'm somewhat of a Johnny-come-lately to that role, only having served as chair for 6 months. So I too want to add my thanks to the board members and the staff and Fred himself, who for many, many years took a number of extremely tough votes, but made the investment and saw the positives that would come out in the end. And as the judge earlier had said in a comment, everybody loves the project in the end when it comes out the way it's supposed to, but not necessarily along the ride. So the people that drove the bus on the ride, thank you for your leadership. And finally, I do wear a former hat, and I'm going to try very hard not to step on Commissioner Ed Lambert's speech here. But I've had the great opportunity to represent and be the commissioner at DCR over the last previous 3.5 years and understand the importance that these beaches are for the recreational opportunities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But most of all, what I think this project here today is for somebody who has been in public service for over 2 decades, This is an example of what the process is supposed to be and how it is supposed to work and the product that it's supposed to deliver. It started with the citizens groups coming together and screaming loudly that they wanted the quality of their water and their harbor back. They wanted the quality of the beaches back. They wanted to be able to use these recreational opportunities and have a better quality of life. They got together, they had some great stakeholders groups, and I know there's a lot of different friends of the beaches from Nahant all the way down to Natasket that are here today. They came together as a group. We had Save the Harbor, Save the Bay that brought everybody, and Bruce and Patty have done a phenomenal job of bringing those voices to one point to be heard. They went to the legislature, and with Senator Hart and the other representatives that are here, they went to the legislature and they found the money. EPA did what they're supposed to do. The judge did what he was supposed to do. But at the end of the day, people listened. They listened and understood. They heard the words that it was important to make the investment in the beaches and the infrastructure here, and they did it. They promised they would do it. They then kept the promise, and today we have the results of cleaner beaches that the children and the citizens of the Commonwealth and the visitors to the Commonwealth are going to be able to enjoy. So it is great when government listens, keeps its promise, and then is there every day to improve the quality of lives of the citizens of Massachusetts. And I think every citizen of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts should be extremely proud of the results of this project in particular. It shows that government does and can work effectively. So on behalf of the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Lieutenant Governor, congratulations to everybody. You want me to introduce the mayor? Fred and I were going to fight over the next introduction, but I'm the chair of the board, so he sat down. So thank you, Fred. I am a former mayor. Ed Lambert, who's going to speak later, is a former mayor. And I think mayors have a particularly important point of view. They understand what's important on the ground to the citizens in their community, and they know how to make things work. And I have to say that while we are mayors, the next person I'm going to introduce is America's mayor, the Commonwealth's mayor. He has stood out in his advocacy for being green, to making investments in open space, recreational opportunities, and then always backed that up. There has been no better partner for the environment and recreation here in the city of Boston or across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I dare say across the country, than our mayor, Mayor Tom Menino.
Thank you, Secretary Sullivan. That's not going to make it easier for your projects in the city, let me tell you. Lambert knows how to play it, nice and quiet and just quiet. I also want to thank Judge Stearns for his involvement in this issue over the years. Thank you, Judge. And also the EPA and, of course, U.S. State Senator Jackie Hart, who's not just a newcomer. He headed up the Beach Commission for many years and fought for these beaches along South Boston and Revere and other places in our Commonwealth. And I just want to thank Jackie for being on these issues before a lot of folks had the vision where these beaches should be going. Also with us is Nick Collins, a state representative from South Boston, and also Billy Lenahan, our city councilor from South Boston. Thank you for being here. Now this was, folks, a true partnership between the city, the state, and federal government. That's when government works its best. We all work together. It's great to be here to celebrate this $259 million project. I'm glad to create over 300 jobs for our working men and women in the building trades. But I'm also happy because it marks another great success in the cleanup of Boston Harbor. Yesterday, I was on Fanpier for the groundbreaking of Vertex's new global headquarters. It was a fabulous event. It means a lot to our city, and to our economy. But just think, would this cutting-edge company want to invest so much in our city, right on the waterfront, if our harbor wasn't cleaned up and accessible? I dare say they would not. The truth is, Boston Harbor's restoration project is one of the most transformative projects in the country. It's allowed for economic development. It's opened up the harbor to the people of Boston and visitors. It's brought families back to our beaches. So I'm glad this pump station will continue this work, especially on the beaches of South Boston and Dorchester. In just over a decade, we have transformed our harbor from the dirtiest in the nation to the cleanest in the nation. Our collective efforts to clean up the harbor have served as a catalyst in the renaissance of our city. Boston has a great maritime tradition and history. So much of our past was centered on the water, and indeed, so much of our future opportunity lies there too. Working together, I know we can continue to enrich that tradition in a way that serves Bostonians in the 21st century. I also want to thank Fred Laskey for all the work he's done on this issue over the years. And Fred and I think Secretary Sullivan, about a year ago, we had this little issue of a water main break. Remember that, Fred?
I'm having a good day, Mayor.
And it wasn't your fault. Somebody was trying to blame you. It wasn't your fault. But let me just tell you, those 48 hours, I never saw an individual act so professionally and help the governor through those issues. And I want to thank you, Fred, for what you did. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I thank you too for your leadership. I think you have underestimated your role in that situation. And I also think that you underestimate your legacy, because your legacy comes after you're gone. During your tenure, the cleanup of Boston Harbor has been one of a national success story. And between your work, your members on the board of directors of the MWRA, and the hard work of the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, the city of Boston, under your leadership, has transformed to one of the cleanest harbors, the cleanest river, the Charles River, and that's not by accident, Mayor. That's in large part because of you, and I thank you for your support. Before I introduce the next speaker, I would like to recognize a couple of people. This was a very expensive project. And the project, for the most part, was paid for by the member cities and towns of the MWRA, 60 communities, 40 some odd in the source side. And representing them is their chairperson, Catherine Haynes Dunphy. And back before environmental justice was a popular thing, the advisory board and the board of directors of the MWRA made a decision that the cost of the CSO cleanup would be shared amongst all the communities. And they took that vote and they stood by it, Mr. Favallaro, the executive director, and this was paid for and was a good project because of the work of the advisory board. And I want to thank them and thank you. And I also will do this now because I believe he's in the middle of teaching a class and has to go back, but he didn't want to miss it. Chancellor Keith Motley from the University of Mass at Boston is here, and class of '79, by the way, of that fine institution of higher learning myself. But when I came to school out in Columbia Point, there was the housing project in the university. Now it's a vibrant, active community that continues to evolve, and between the archives and the museum that's going in and the housing that's changed, and now UMass is going to expand down here to the convention center, it's alive and it's moving and it's a great place. And that's in large part because of the chancellor. He's got that university on the move, and I'm proud to be an alumnus, and I'm proud of the job you do. Thank you. Believe it or not, the elected officials of South Boston probably had the most difficult task of all in this thing. They were being pressured from all sides to the middle, thumb screws, being tortured. No, not that bad, but pretty close. And they were very difficult. And the now deceased Councilor Kelly, Representative Brian Walsh, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Linehan, Representative Collins, and Senator Hart really were in an awkward position, trying to get the beach cleaned, but doing it in a way that wouldn't ruin their neighborhood. And people will never understand, and I'll speak for Senator Hart, the countless hours that he spent and the other elected officials on this project. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all because, again, he was getting hit from all sides. And I can remember one day he summons me to his office, which seemed like for a while there a weekly or a daily event to talk about where this project was going, because this project had a long and tortured past, and there were 7 different alternatives. And he said, look at Fred, there's only one way to get to the bottom of this. You got to go to Lucky Devlin's dining room and meet with Al Roach and a couple of other folks and find out what works for them and what you can do. And I did. I called. She was very gracious. Lucky's right here. She's a community activist. Sat in her kitchen or in her dining area for a couple of hours that day. She laid out very clearly what they could live with, what they couldn't live with. And we now had some parameters to work with to go back to our engineers and say, hey, can you make that work? And I'll talk about the engineers in a minute. So I would just like to thank Senator Hart from the bottom of my heart for all his work. We were stressed at times. We got in each other's face a few times, respectfully, but he did right by his community and he did right by the harbor, and he should be proud of today because today happened in large part because of him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How about a nice round of applause for Fred Laskey once again? Wasn't he great? And I know that Fred did exactly that. He said, give me one piece of advice. I said, go see Lucky. Lucky Devlin. Lucky Devlin is one of the great advocates in our neighborhood that really made this project such a... I'd also like to, I know that City Councilor Bill Linehan has been mentioned, Representative Collins. I'd also like to mention former Senate President Bob Travellini, who actually was an integral part of putting together the Beaches Commission that Kathy Ann Reinstein, the representative from Revere, and I worked on with the DCR. He's over here to my right. Can we give a nice round of applause to our former Senate President Bob Travellini, and also to my co-chair of the Beaches Commission. As I mentioned a minute ago, Kathy Ann Reinstein. We spent, with the Beaches Commission, we spent, I don't know, was it a year? Maybe a year and a half going around to all the beaches from Nahant, Linden Nahant, all the way down to Nantasket. As the harbor was becoming cleaner, we wanted to focus more on the land side. So we met in each of the communities, sometimes, as Fred had mentioned a minute ago around the MWRA project, sometimes in a very contentious way, but all in a way to try to make the land side and our beaches the best that they could be here in the city of Boston and in greater Boston as well. So Kathy Ann Reinstein deserves a great amount of credit as well. And one final thing about Fred Laskey. He mentioned Mayor Menino's legacy. And he said, when you're gone. I didn't know the mayor was going anywhere, for God's sakes. He just said, the mayor said, yeah, your legacy comes when you're dead. That's what he was. But and Fred, by the way, Fred was an extraordinary leader here, not just because but he met with Lucky Devlin, though from the neighborhood side, that was great. He's just been a great administrator as well at the MWRA. And it's been such a long time that he started this project. He had a full head of dark brown hair. And I think we all did. Actually, I have a little bit of gray myself. But anyway, it seemed like ages ago when we began meeting at the Tynan School with the MWRA to help design this CSO project, which would have an extraordinary impact on the water quality of our beaches for generations to come. Certainly there are those who deserve credit. The MWRA, the Conservation Law Foundation, my friends Patty and Bruce from who are with us on the Beaches Commission, from Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and also the city solicitor from Quincy, who originally filed the lawsuit back in the 1980s because he was walking along the Wollaston Beach and actually stepped in something that he found offensive and filed a lawsuit around the Clean Water Act, dating back to 1972. We owe a great deal of gratitude for all those people that made this possible. But I want to focus briefly on the people in the neighborhood. Not only Lucky Devlin, but Mary and Tom Cooney. This is for 10 years we've been waiting for the completion of this project, and we worked for a number of years, meeting monthly. The CSO working group, we called it. Tom and Mary Cooney, I know Al Roach, and also Joe and Leslie Marr, and so many other people that came together to really make this project the project that it is. I remember, so thank you for all of you for making this happen. I remember, and Kathy Reinstein will cringe when I tell this story, but I remember as a kid in the mid-'60s going down to 8th Street Beach, which is just a couple of blocks from here, with my mother and with all the mothers in the neighborhood, all the families in the neighborhood, carrying our lounge chairs and coolers filled with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, Zarex, and Kool-Aid, right, Kathy? Remember those days? She loves the Zarex story. She never heard of Zarex before I had mentioned it. And I used to tell this story at each of the meetings around the Beaches Commission, because we had a different audience every time we went around to the different towns. We didn't need Cape Cod. When I was a kid, we didn't need Cape Cod. We had what James Michael Curley referred to as an oasis in the city. That's what we had. And then we lost it. What I call the Iron Curtain was brought down in the form of a polluted Boston Harbor, separating our neighborhood from what is our greatest natural resource. Well, with this project and the work of so many people in this room, it's all back. M Street Beach, just a couple of blocks from here. You should see it in the summertime. It's like Miami Beach, South Beach in Miami. And we owe a great deal of debt of gratitude to so many people in this room once again for all the work that you've done. And I couldn't be prouder to have worked on this project for so long and to be standing here with all of you to celebrate. Once again, thank you very much and congratulations.
Before I introduce the next speaker, I would thank you, Chancellor. Appreciate you coming out. Right in the front row, Lucky. There you go. Right where you belong. Whoop. The advocacy groups, big and small, have played a critical role in this. And just end up forgetting someone, but obviously the Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, Boston Harbor Association is here, Conservation Law Foundation, the Castle Island Associates, the Bathhouse Association, the Dorchester groups. There's just an endless flood of volunteers who stepped up. The Harbor Alliance, really all were key players in trying to get to the right spot and work constructively to a solution. The next speaker really needs no introduction. Judge Stearns, the authority, as you know, for many years was under the watchful eye and guidance of Judge Mazzoni. And when Judge Mazzoni passed, there was a high level of anxiety about where the case was going to go. And I can say that either by luck or by design, it went to a man who truly enjoys this project, Judge Stearns. He is a man who has studied and learned it, not only in the broader legal sense, but in the details of what is going on in Boston Harbor. And while it was very intimidating initially to go to see the judge, I don't know why, something about seeing a federal judge used to make the hair on the back of my neck go up. But he has a way of putting you at ease, but letting you know that he's in charge and that he knows what he's talking about. And he was instrumental in it played a key role in negotiations that led to a nationally renowned settlement on the completion of the CSO projects here in Boston, including this project in particular, which is of particular interest to him. And I will assure you that without much fanfare, he has been out and around kicking the tires on this project as it unfolded, and knows it very, very well from being here firsthand. Before I ask you to come up, Judge, I would say that, like me, you, in many cases, are only as good as the people behind you. And Marcia Zurich and Becca Tyler, his 2 law clerks who handle this case, deserve a great round of applause as well. So thank you. And I hope you've noticed I'm a quick learner. There's no discussion of legacy here, Judge. I'm done with that.
Too kind, but well, this is the first time in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been able to speak to an audience where one half are not going to leave furious with whatever I have to say. I was thinking just a few words about the harbor, and the thought of synergy is what came to my mind. Events that you would think are unrelated, many of which are fortuitous. A court order, a courthouse being built on Fan Pier, a mayor with a persistent and indefatigable vision for what Fan Pier could become, an environmental community that was willing to accept the good and not sacrifice it to the unattainable perfect, the absolutely right combination of political leadership in the right place, in addition to the mayor at the right time, and most important, the men and women of the MWRA and leaders like Fred Laskey, about whom I cannot say too much, and for whom what it has been a pleasure to work with. Becca Tyler and Marcia Zurich were introduced to you. Just as a thought on the harbor, unfortunately I was in Europe when the Boston Harbor Association held what I understand were, in fact I know, were 2 astonishing symposia on the harbor, one of them at the courthouse. Becca dutifully attended as my spy, just to ensure that I knew what was being said. And the note, I want to read just one part of the note report that she sent me, because I think it's very revealing about how far we've come. She said, I attended both events and they were incredible and truly inspirational. There was only a quick look back on the history of the harbor. What was so great and different about these fora was that they focused on the future of the harbor, the dynamic waterfront that we now have, and the innovative ideas and people that are continuing to make the harbor really intertwined with city life and the improvement of Boston. We're all looking to the future now. The project that once was the project that could not succeed, that was the project of endless contention and debate, is now an accepted part of our history, an accepted accomplishment, and something now we do not have to look backwards at, we can look forward. But I will look back for just a minute, and that has to do with the project that we're here to celebrate today. The idea of this tunnel, the storage tunnel, first appears in court docket document number 1583 in 2004. That will give you some sense of how closely intertwined the court is with this ongoing project. Fred gets to amass bricks and mortars. I get to oversee the amassing of paper. And the stack of paper is high, but perhaps the paper has contributed something to this accomplishment. Judge Mazzoni has been mentioned. It was not divine intervention, it was Judge Mazzoni's intervention. He asked me, as he was in his last illness, to take the case. He made me promise that I would not retire until the entire project is done. So I keep asking Fred to come up with new ideas, because I have no intention of, but this I think you'll enjoy. One of the last things Judge Mazzoni left me was a memo about things that he thought that I should become involved in and encourage the MWRA to do, or to endorse if the MWRA was thinking of doing it. And one of the items, in fact, the first item in the memo he left me, is something about a storage tunnel that could be built under South Boston. And in this memo, he says, I think they can finish it by May of 2011. And I think they can do it for $257 million. This is a project you ought to support and see through to its completion. I looked this morning. It takes the Navy, on average, with all of the designs in place before construction begins, 7 years to build a nuclear aircraft carrier. I won't even go into the issue of cost overrun. No nuclear aircraft carrier has ever been built with anything close to what it was initially scheduled to cost. This project, think of it, in 2004 dollars, Judge Mazzoni thought $257 billion. Fred, 225, I think, is where we are in today's dollars. Well, this is one of those days that I get to be proud. I get to take some small credit, but very, very small credit for what has happened. The real credit, as I said, goes to Fred and to those who have staffed this project, the leaders in the community who have supported it, the environmental community that's been there every step of the way. And trust me, we're not done. I'm not retiring. We still have years and years to go.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you for all your guidance and advice and leadership. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the Vice Chair of the Board of the MWRA, John Carroll. He's a founding member of the board, representing the advisory board in the town of Norwood. Another key player who was unable to be here because he's down in Washington because Congress is in session is Congressman Steve Lynch. This obviously, back to when he was a state senator, was an important project, and he was very, very active and effective in negotiating some very difficult parts of this project and also helping us get some federal funding for it. So I'd like to thank him. He has a staff person here, Jeff Mahoney, and thank you, Jeff, for coming, and please send our regards to the Congressman. I also see in the background former Chairman Bob Gollich, former Chairman of the board. Thank you for coming, Bob. As well as the former regional administrator for the EPA, Robert Varney. Thanks, Bob, for coming. And that's my segue to introduce the next speaker, who is Kurt Spalding, the regional head of the EPA. And I think it's safe to say that the MWRA and the EPA kind of have a love-hate relationship. We kind of go at it a little bit, and then we all kind of slap each other on the back when things come out okay. And I guess that's the way it should work. And I will just say that Kurt is a man who comes with a breadth of experience in this field. He comes from Rhode Island, where he was the head of the Save the Bay organization down there. He knows the issues. He knows them well. I think he was probably on the job for 2 days when he asked to come for a tour of Deer Island, and spent hours walking through, kicking the tires there. And he's a man who's attentive to the issues and knows them and understands them, and also, because of his experience in Rhode Island, appreciates that you just can't wave a magic wand and make things happen, that it takes the Herculean effort sometimes to get things done and accomplished, and we appreciate that. So with no further ado, Kurt Spalding.
Well, Fred is right. I may be the new guy on this dais up here with everyone here, and congratulations to everyone, but I am not new to these issues. And I want to just start with a point that I know what all those meetings were about. I know how many times people had to ask themselves hard questions. Exactly nights, organizing, conversation, fact letters, to this message to the community, building support that was necessary, and actually leaders had to exercise in the face of challenge. This kind of work, Menino, or we talk about Senator Hart, or we talk pressure, great get there, but stood up, and it's been a great pleasure get to know who showed enormous leadership. He also brought me his water treatment plant, his drinking water plant, a wonderfully impressive facility. I've been to, this is just after. I want to congratulate everyone in this, but I also want to congratulate the folks who are in the agencies to help make it happen. Today, I with us Ken Moraff, Todd Borchi, and Mike Wagner from EPA. But before them, there were others, and before them, there were others. Before me, there were other regional administrators. Of course, Bob Varney's here, but before that, there was Julie Balaga. But way before that, there was an administrator who I admired very much, who was there when I started with EPA, Michael DeLand, who I think was the administrator at the time, who said, we're going to do something about this, and we indeed are going to take the Clean Water Act very seriously here in Boston. So it is and it's an amazing story. Back in December, EPA celebrated its 40th anniversary. The Aspen Institute was asked to identify great accomplishments that EPA was part of across the country. And of course, the accomplishment that was one that was highlighted as one of the top 40 things EPA has accomplished in this country was indeed helping be part of the story that we're celebrating today, the cleanup of Boston Harbor. So this is a national story. It's also a big regional story. Anywhere the MBTA goes, which is now into Rhode Island and into far away places, the prosperity of Boston will drive this region. This region goes as the Boston goes, and I don't know if the mayor knows that he's the mayor of a region, not just a city, but indeed he really is, because this economy and the prosperity Boston is now experiencing, that was just alluded to, is because of this kind of work. I like to go around the region and talk about restoring the green capital and building a new prosperity for New England. And that green capital is the land, the brownfields, and of course the water. And what we're seeing here today is the benefit of restoring the water and the future it's going to bring. But it also brings this deep connection to water resources. We've heard about South Boston. This is a new South Boston, connected to the water, vital, a wonderful place to live. That is the future of Boston. It is a different place than I came to in 1987 when I first started with EPA. It is indeed a Renaissance city. It is about what urban places are and are going to be about in the future. I think there's been a lot of discussion when you look at demographics going forward. An esteemed institution like the Brookings Institution has said it is about cities. The future of this country is about cities. Young people are going to want to live in cities. They're not going to live where their parents lived. They want to experience all that cities has to offer, and now we have to offer one of the cleanest water resources in all of the United States. So it is a wonderful accomplishment for everybody. I want to close with this last thought. This would not have happened but for the Federal Clean Water Act. We can talk a lot about what was accomplished right here, but years and years ago, some powerful people, some thoughtful people pushed through a piece of legislation that has really changed the country. That act passed, and I'm going to say this because of one very important great senator who happened to hail from Rhode Island, and his name was Senator John Chafee. So we have to remember who the father of the Clean Water Act is, where this all started, and say that it only happens because people work together, they're willing to grind through the tough stuff and come out on the other side with a new vision and a new prosperity for New England. So I congratulate all of you and know that as I travel the whole region, I refer to the story that's here because this story needs to be played in other places, and it's going to take the same determination and hard work to make it happen. So again, thank you all and congratulations.
I'd like to thank the students from the South Boston Catholic Academy for coming, and this is really about the kids, the beach. Seemed like a good idea at the time, kids, right? We're going to go hang out on the beach, huh? Little did you know you needed a winter coat. Before I introduce the next speaker, I'd just say that a lot of people worked on this. Hundreds of jobs were involved. And the collaboration between the MWRA staff and the contractors and the design firms who worked on it, many of them are represented here today. I would like to introduce Joe Durant, who's the president of Moses. Joe represents the engineers and the scientists who work at the authority, and they work very closely with the design firms and the contractors. And I'll probably end up forgetting someone, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just mention some of the folks. Parsons, Brinkerhoff, and Metcalf and Eddy, AECom, were designed this, as well as Face Wofford and Thorndike. I know Emil is here, Emil Hamway from Face Wofford is here, Hatchmont, McDonald, Shaw Environmental's here. I believe the president is here, and Vahid Jazari is here from that company. The construction work was a joint venture on the tunnel with Schenck, Balfour Beatty, Barletta. I know that Mr. Barletta is here this morning. They've done great work for us over the years. Walsh Construction is here. I believe Bob Bailey is here from Walsh. And Frank Gioso is here from Gioso and Sons. And I probably left some of the subcontractors out, but I apologize. I thank you one and all for your professionalism, for the quality of your work, and the cooperation that you've had with our staff. I appreciate it. I'd also say that this project, for the most part, was built with union labor, the Boston Building Trades. 13 different unions participated in this, and they did a spectacular job. And it's not easy work. Okay, the next speaker has been mentioned quite a few times today, and I think that's indicative of the shift of the burden over to DCR on the beach, and that is Commissioner Ed Lambert. Mr. Lambert has a long track record before state service of being an effective manager as a mayor, and also of being a staunch environmental advocate for his community and his region down in southeastern Massachusetts. And I think there was a whole bunch of folks who, when the governor announced that appointment, said, wow, that's a good appointment. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Commissioner Lambert.
Fred, thank you very much. And we choose to refer to it not so much as a shifting of the burden, but it's just simply a continuing transitioning partnership, if you don't mind. Well, the challenge, of course, of speaking last is that all the best lines have been used and everything's been said. But the great opportunity about speaking last is to have that one last chance to congratulate and thank everyone who's been so integrally involved with this project. As a relative newcomer to DCR, I've had little personal involvement in this, but our agency has had some significant involvement. I'll speak to that in just a minute. But I think very appropriately today, we've thanked an awful lot of folks, including those early instigators who chose the activist route to help change policy in a way that makes democracy vibrant and one that we all appreciate. And so we thank not only them, but the elected officials, the policy officials, and others who chose not to fight that, but to work with it and do the right thing. Advocates like Patty and Bruce and Tom Powers and Vivian Lee and so many of the other groups that DCR works in partnership with to try to advance the cause of creating value-added experiences for people who live in our communities across the Commonwealth. We're grateful for everybody's work, and I'm glad to hear Fred mention labor, because there's certain focus and strength that they bring to our operation at DCR, and the tradespeople who worked on this project not only completed it on time, but made it a high-quality project. And last but not least, in terms of thanks and expressions of gratitude, go to the staff at DCR. I'm very fortunate that the governor has asked me to be part of what I think is a great state agency. And over the last several years, really under the vision of my predecessor, Secretary Sullivan, there's been a recognition that this project is certainly a significant piece of the puzzle, but it's a wasted investment if it is not counted with the kind of investment in our urban beaches, the likes of which the Beaches Commission with Senator Hart and Representative Reinstein have helped pull together. Without that investment in the beaches and the harbor islands and the like, we can't maximize the celebration that this event represents. And so Secretary Sullivan and the staff, our Deputy Commissioner Jack Murray, Sam Overton Bussell, our Director of Urban Parks, Joe Orfant from Planning, Carl Pastore, who's here. Throughout the entire organization, there's been incredible excitement leading to this day and what it means for us in terms of these great facilities that we're in proximity to. Rick mentioned our role as former mayors, certainly as former mayors, but even outside of that, the perspective is not lost on anybody in terms of the economic development impact that can accrue from this. The great branding that Mayor Menino has done for this great city in terms of making sure that it's in the national spotlight is enhanced by this particular investment. And so we certainly know that it complements the great work that he's done. But across this Commonwealth, for the iconic properties that are in the DCR portfolio, there are none better than these beaches and these harbor islands. They are very special places to us, special places for residents across this Commonwealth, and enhance what we consider the value-added experience that we think DCR can bring to the quality of life for residents not only in Boston, but across this Commonwealth and beyond. And so we not only recognize that impact, but we also recognize it's about access. And when I hear Senator Hart talk about stories relative to people in this neighborhood and beyond who have been able to have great memories and experiences because they at one time had access to these facilities. The return of that access is incredibly important, and quite frankly, the responsibility on public agencies for access means the provision of opportunity for equal access to everyone, wherever they live. And that makes, I think, this a cause for great celebration. So on behalf of the agency, as we transition into a new phase of our partnership, Fred, we want to make sure that we commit, and as Commissioner, I commit today, that our agency will be not only full partners, but we will continue to invest resources, the likes of which we have in our beaches and at the islands, and that we will engage in best practices that will ensure these beaches will be open as many days as possible. The sun always shines in South Boston, that's what I was told, and we recognize that, and we think it's a great day. So thank you all very much, and my job is also to, are you coming back here? Oh, okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. A lot of people have said a lot of nice things this morning, and they've said a lot of nice things about me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I will tell you that I accept that praise on behalf of the staff, because I'm just one guy trying to grind it out, and I'm surrounded with great folks who go above and beyond the call of duty and have really, were at this project long before I got here, and just have done a fabulous job. And so I know you always run into problems if you start introducing people, because you'll end up forgetting someone and someone will feel slighted, so I'll apologize in advance. Former staff, Mike McBride, Ralph Wallace I saw here. I can remember Ralph selling used cars, we used to joke, and going place to place and trying to figure it out. And I can remember one thing sticks in my mind. I was coming back from a meeting, grabbing McBride and saying, Mike, can you get us to 25 years of control without the tunnel coming out of the top of the Boulevard? He came back in a few weeks and said, I can do it, and that was the start of the whole thing right there. So, Ralph, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Dave Kubiak, who's run the CSO program very effectively for many years. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Charlie Button, I don't think anyone needs to say anything about Charlie Button. He's a man who has an incredible reputation, and a man who wore many hats in the cleanup of Boston Harbor, from Boston Water and Sewer to the Deer Island project. And I can remember when we had Mike McBride leave to go to the lucrative private sector, Mike Hornbrook and I both said, Charlie Button's the man. We went over to the 99, and he was working in the private sector at the time, and he said, I would have no better legacy of my career than to finish it off with this project. And Charlie, you did it. Thank you. Lisa Hamilton, Brendan Conlon, Billy Hartford, all the folks who are out here in the rain during the construction managers. Thank you very much. Navaradan, Nava. I did it. Didn't I do it, Nava? Here's the man. Mayor, you're lucky he doesn't live in Boston. He's the most popular guy in the place. Nava, thank you. And our chief engineer, Jay Kim, goes without saying, Jay, thank you for all you bring to the table. John Viteri, our new Deputy Chief Operating Officer, thank you. And there's one last guy who I will take a minute and reflect on and talk about, because he's the most unassuming guy in the world. He'll walk into the lion's den. He's literally had his laptop ripped off a table in one of these public meetings by someone who was angry with what he said, and he's unflappable. And he is, if you were to go into Wikipedia and type in dedicated public servant, Michael Hornbrook's picture would come up. So Michael, thank you. Again, I thank you all. I would say we had a grand plan, which was to have a nice big red ribbon. We were going to have it on the other side by the water. Then we were all going to walk over and cut this big red ribbon with everyone having scissors. We're going to try to do it. Maybe we'll just let the kids do it. You want to cut the ribbon, kids?
Okay.